How could someone do this? It's a question that just echoes, right? Chills you. And it's one that absolutely gripped an entire nation when the full horror of the Aftab Poonawalla case started coming out. So today we're doing a deep dive. And it's not just a crime story. It's really a chilling look into human psychology, toxic relationships, and yeah, society's blind spots.
Exactly. And the sources we're drawing from, they provide this really detailed kind of psychologically layered investigation. Our goal here really is to pull out the key insights, the important bits from what is, let's face it, a very complex and disturbing story. It's kind of a shortcut for you, the listener, to grasp the shocking details and, the bigger picture without getting totally overwhelmed. We'll be focusing on, well, the anatomy of the crime itself, the minds involved, and maybe what lessons we can actually learn from this.
Right. To even begin to understand the how, we need to look at the who, the couple. Let's start with Aftab Poonawalla, born 1994, Maharashtra. Not someone widely known before all this, obviously, but descriptions paint him as, well, educated, articulate, good at charming people, especially, it seems, on dating apps like Bumble. He could sort of adapt. And then there's Shraddha Walkar, 26, from Palghar, also Maharashtra. Friends described her as, really vibrant, social, fiercely independent, a dreamer. She loved photography, wanted something more than her small town life, wanted to explore.
And what's really striking, looking at the early days, is just how fast things moved. Friends definitely noticed. They escalated quickly. Shraddha was posting photos with him very early on, talking about living together almost immediately. That intensity, right from the beginning, it's something multiple people pointed out. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? That whirlwind romance look versus what might have been simmering underneath.
Exactly, and it becomes clear pretty quickly that there were major challenges right from the get-go. Shraddha's family, they strongly opposed the relationship, mainly because they weren't married and they had different religious backgrounds.
And this opposition, it led to something really critical. They ended up cutting ties with her family. The sources specifically flag this. It's called a classic sign in abusive relationships. Why? Because it creates isolation. You remove that support system, and suddenly Aftab has much more control over her life. It's a really dangerous setup.
And the physical abuse, it apparently started early on. Shraddha did confide in friends sometimes, showed them bruises even, but she'd always kind of brush it off. The typical, oh, we just fought. It's sadly common.
Which does raise that difficult question, about intervention. If friends saw things. And connecting the dots, the sources mention Aftab actually had a history of aggression. Apparently, former girlfriends alleged she could get extremely possessive and violent, particularly if he didn't get his own way. So then, May 2022, they move. They get this rented apartment in Morali in Delhi. Neighbors heard loud arguments sometimes, but as the sources put it so chillingly, no one imagined what was going on behind closed doors.
So fast forward to May 18th, 2022. The day the final horrific argument happened.
Yeah, and the sources point to a specific trigger for Aftab. Shraddha threatened to leave him. Now, for someone with narcissistic traits, this isn't just upsetting. It's perceived as the ultimate loss of control. It's a massive wound. In his confession, Aftab said he strangled her in a fit of rage.
But the horror didn't end with her death. What came next? It's almost unbelievable in its calculation. Instead of panic, he seemed to shift into this methodical phase. His goal: dispose of the body, leave no trace. And he apparently drew inspiration from TV shows like Dexter. Investigators actually confirmed he watched it.
The process itself is just methodical is the only word. He bought a big fridge, first step, to store her remains. Then, over nearly 3 weeks, he dismembered her body. Reports say 35 pieces using a saw. And each night he'd go out, dispose of parts in different forested areas nearby, Morali, Chhatarpur. It wasn't panic. The sources really stress the calm, calculated nature of it all. It suggests meticulous planning, not just a frantic reaction.
And for months after, he kept up this elaborate cover-up, replying to texts from her phone, pretending everything was normal. He even apparently made a few social media updates from her account just to stop anyone getting suspicious. And it worked for a while. Her disappearance went unnoticed for months. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, the alarm wasn't raised until much later, November 8th, 2022. That's when Shraddha's father, Vikas Walkar, realized he hadn't actually heard from her in ages. He filed a missing persons report. That complaint eventually got transferred to the Delhi police.
So the police bring Aftab in for questioning. Initially, he sticks to a story, right? Says they just broke up, she left. But his story had holes, inconsistencies, and when they checked phone location data, well, things didn't add up. They got suspicious.
Right. And it was after sustained interrogation, as the reports put it, that he finally broke. He confessed, not just to the murder, but to the incredibly gruesome details of the dismemberment and disposal. That confession kicked off this huge search operation in those Delhi forest areas. And over the next few days, they started finding remains, body parts, including a jawbone. That jawbone was later matched to Shraddha through DNA, crucial evidence. They also seized other things, obviously. The fridge, tools, found traces of blood. When psychologists and forensic experts looked at the case, the profile they built of Aftab was, well, chilling. They described him as a narcissistic, emotionally detached individual with tendencies towards psychopathy.
That profile, I mean, are there specific actions that really illustrate that detachment for you? Because some details are just hard to comprehend.
Well, the one that always stands out and is deeply disturbing is him keeping her head in the fridge for days while he was still eating food stored in that same fridge.
Yeah.
That goes beyond just a lack of empathy. It shows this profound, almost unbelievable psychological detachment from the act itself, compartmentalizing the horror. It's also worth noting the case did highlight some potential delays, both forensically and maybe in the initial investigation stages, which can sometimes be an issue in complex cases like that.
That detail about the fridge.
Yeah.
Wow,
Well,
wow. And his ability to just carry on, dating other women while her remains were still in the apartment. It really does make you wonder about the kind of internal world that allows for that.
absolutely. And, moving beyond just Aftab's psychology, this case really forces us to look at broader societal issues, particularly how we respond, or maybe don't respond, to domestic violence. It shines a harsh light on how these patterns of abuse, sometimes subtle at first, can just continue unchecked. Friends saw bruises, neighbors heard fights, but as the sources say again and again, no one intervened. And we have to remember how that initial family disapproval led to her cutting ties. That removed a vital safety net, didn't it? It's just such a stark reminder that domestic violence thrives in isolation. We really need better intervention systems.
So where does the legal case stand now? Well, the latest is Aftab is facing charges under the Indian Penal Code, Section 302 for murder and 201 for destroying evidence. His defense team has tried to raise questions about the chain of evidence, naturally. But the prosecution's case seems pretty strong, relying heavily on that forensic evidence, like the DNA match on the bones.
And public opinion.
Great.
It's just overwhelmingly against
That's
him,
right.
understandably. The sheer brutality, the calculated nature of it all, it's made him one of the most reviled figures in recent public memory. Which sort of brings us back to the question, what uncomfortable truth does this whole situation force us to confront?
Yeah, it really points towards the lessons in legacy, as the sources put it. What should we take away from this?
There are a few key things, I think. First, and it sounds stark, but toxic love can kill. Red flags, warning signs, they should never, ever be ignored. Second, the sources emphasize how crucial police and forensic response times are in homicide investigations. Delays can matter hugely. Third, and this is important, domestic violence awareness can't just be about married couples. Live-in partners face exactly the same risks, the same dangers. We need to recognize that vulnerability. And maybe the hardest lesson, public intervention can save lives. People speaking up, stepping in when they see signs of abuse. It matters.
It's a grim reminder, this whole deep dive into the Aftab Poonawalla case, but maybe a vital one, about how crucial it is to recognize those signs in relationships and our communities and actually act on them.
Indeed. That apartment in Morali, it's still locked. A silent witness. Shraddha's family continues to seek justice. Aftab's fate rests with the courts now. But that question we started with, how could someone do this? It still hangs in the air, doesn't it? It reminds us that sometimes the darkest monsters are not strangers in the night, but people we once loved. So the final thought for you, the listener, might be, what steps can you take in your own life and your community to help build a society where these patterns are seen and acted upon much, much sooner?